I think it was inconsiderate of the Bears and Ben Johnson to do this at 10 till 4.
Yeah.
I'm just in there talking to people. We're planning. We're talking about what the next step is. I think inconsiderate is the word I'm going with. You know what? I'm going to stand by it.
Yeah.
10 till 4, Ben Johnson is now the coach of the Chicago Bears. So of the 10 people, it was 10, not 12. Of the 10 people the Jaguars interviewed, 9 are left. And we'll get to the game.
Yeah,
are you surprised?
I am surprised. I mean, just a bombshell. It's just so disappointing because, we want to cover a good team. We want the city to have a good team. And it's just so clear from the last 2 weeks that that's not going to ever happen here. Like, they may have a year here and there where things fall into place and they have some success. But the way that Shad Khan runs his football team and this devotion to Trent Baalke has cost him. Now, we'll see if, look, in 3 years, maybe Ben Johnson will be the first guy fired in this search, and whoever the Jaguars hire will end up being great. But the odds tell you that's probably not going to happen, that this will be a day that you look back on in a couple years and you're like, how did this happen? Because I do believe the Jaguars had the most attractive destination. The Bears certainly have a lot to like on their roster, but it just feels like a complete missed opportunity because Shad Khan didn't want to fire a bad general manager that has a horrible reputation around the league.
So I'll weigh in on all this. First of all, I'll say this. I told you this 3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago that these narratives develop. The narrative that developed was that Doug and Trent were going to both be out. That was the narrative. Well, Doug was fired, Trent wasn't. Then the other narrative is that Ben Johnson was the next coming of Lombardi, Walsh, Knoll, kind of all rolled into one, the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the Jags were going to go get him now, and he was going to make Trevor really good, and that was going to happen. And it was Ben Johnson or bust. And I told you, we had this talk. I'm serious about this. We joked about this, that Jaguar fans are so caught up in the vision of Ben Johnson, who's never been head coach in his life, but they've been so caught up in the vision that what if it's not Ben Johnson? What if he takes another job? And I even asked you that, and you said, gosh, I don't know. I'm kind of locked in on Ben Johnson. I think that's the narrative. That was the danger of the narrative. The reality is, I'll give you a couple realities. Number one, if he took the job today, this had to have been in the works. I don't think he went to bed last night. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't think Ben Johnson went to bed last night not knowing who he was going to coach next year, and before dinner time signed a deal worth, I'm guessing, $30-40 million. It just seemed, and again, I don't know, but that would seem awfully fast if it wasn't in the works. And again, I don't know that. But it would just, I don't think he's interviewed anywhere in person. He couldn't have, right? By league rule, he couldn't interview in person until they lost, and they just lost. So it seemed all the talk about here and there and Vegas and there, and it seems to me, and again, it'll all come out, by the way, I would imagine. But I would think at some point, if he's the head coach of the Chicago Bears at 3 o'clock Central Time on Sunday, which is literally 2 days after his team that everybody thought was going to be in the NFC Championship game, it had to be in the works. It seems to me, and again, I don't know that. It just seems that way.
I could see him basically telling his agent, look, I don't want this to drag out. I've done interviews. I don't really have a major interest in another week's worth of traveling to 3 different cities. Just let them know. I want to make this decision. Send us your best offer, and what we've asked for. Are you going to grant that? And
could be.
And I would think between the Bears, Raiders, and Jags, the Bears obviously, met every demand. The Raiders probably did their best, and the Jaguars did nothing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that the Raiders did their best and the Jaguars did nothing. We don't know what the other two did. The reality is we don't know what the other two did. What we do know is the Bears were willing to hire him without a one-on-one interview. That's what we do know. And maybe all 3 would have been, for all we know. But it just seems to me it happened really fast. To me, it seemed like it happened really fast. I don't think we know what all the others did or didn't do. But So Ben Johnson is off the board. And so it now goes to who's on the Jaguar list, who are the best candidates for the Jags, when do they make the decision, and how quickly does it happen? I will say this. I didn't think anyone was getting hired today. Did you think anybody that any of the guys were getting hired by any of the teams today?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think any of them were getting hired today. I almost assumed that the in-person interview was the accepted protocol. Maybe not rule, but I just assumed that the in-person interview was accepted protocol. That's why, and again, unless, by the way, unless Ben Johnson flew to Chicago last night, I guess he could have. He's in Detroit, which is right next door. I guess it's conceivable he could have popped over to Detroit, had a one-person interview, had flown over to Chicago, had an in-person interview with Ryan Poles and the McCaskies Sunday night, had breakfast this morning, and they made him the offer. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll say this. We'll, like you said, we'll see. We're still talking about a bunch of guys, for the most part, who have never been head coaches. In this list, in today's 10, 12 guys, there's a couple of guys that have been head coaches before, Mike Vrabel among them, but for the most part, it's a bunch of guys that haven't been head coaches before. So we'll see how they wind up doing. So certainly Ben Johnson off the board. He goes to the Chicago Bears, according to Adam Schefter. We'll go through the list of who the Jags might or may not hire. I've said all along, I said this last week, I thought it would be Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen. I believe that. So I guess, unless I'm going to wander off, I guess I now got to predict it's Liam Cohen.
I think it'd be shocking if it wasn't Liam Cohen because no one else wants him.
Yeah.
So of course he'll be the Jaguars coach. I mean, I'm being serious. I'm not trying to.
Well,
it's just frustrating. I've covered this team since 2013, and so many people have been fans of this team their whole lives.
Yeah, but we don't know. Hayes, maybe Ben Johnson really is great, but we don't know. I mean, the reality is, even if the Jags had hired him, we don't know. He's never done it. I mean, that's reality. Nor has Liam Cohen ever done it. We don't know. Nor has Joe Brady ever done it. They may all be great. Some of them, the reality is we don't know. That's and nobody knows. So I'm surprised. We'll go through. But again, back to the Liam Cohen point. From my point, I really believed it'd be one of those two. So unless there's new information, and this is, I don't have insight that they're about to hire Liam Cohen. I just believed all along it would be one of those two guys. The third guy for me was Aaron Glenn. That was the third guy that I assumed would be in play. So we'll see if it's one of those guys. Who winds up being one of those guys.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.